What's the good word, y'all? It's your boy DKB here. So, a little late catching up on this news, but apparently, according to sources, Joe Douglas has a strong affinity for one of the tackles in the 2024 NFL draft class. Should be readily available, right? We've seen him drafted or mocked, I should say, to the New York Jets in Daniel Jeremiah's recent mock draft, which we'll get into in a little bit. But we're talking about tackle Taliese Fuaga. According to Rich Samini, there's been a lot of buzz in scouting circles as it relates to Joe Douglas tapping in on Fuaga, keeping tabs on him for reportedly a couple of months, which would be noticeable right now. We're in the midst of draft season, right? It's early technically, but in New York Jets land, we're already kind of a month into this essentially, and so you start looking at smoke signs, right? Is this a way to get eyes off of another prospect, maybe somebody that's a late riser, right? Let's just say, for example, Joe Douglas does have a strong passion for Fuaga. You take a look at his skill set. He is a acceptable pass protector with an elite run blocking ability, and there are some differences here, but we did just cover another tackle with a similar skill set and ability, and probably a better physical build to work off of in JC Latham out of Alabama. So if you love him, I imagine you're pretty fairly high on the other guy as well. So maybe as guys creep up, this is a way to proactively try to manipulate some of the other teams out there. But honestly, I do think this is all just draft smoke for the most part, right? Obviously, I would say most teams would probably love the top 3 to 4 guys in this class, and you're checking on guys early anyway, so it's not like this would be a foregone conclusion that Joe Douglas has tapped in to that Oregon team a few times. But one of the other things to consider, right, would be that Daniel Jeremiah, as mentioned, mocked Fuaga to the New York Jets. Now, it's not just that he mocked him, it's the fact that Fuaga was picked over Fashanu, who was also available and generally regarded as, the top tackle, or at least one of the top 2 tackles along with Joe Alt, right? Then it's Fuaga and everybody else after in that second tier, third tier, etc. Daniel Jeremiah being friends with JD, maybe there's some inside info there. Jeremiah also a pretty viable source when it comes to the scouting gossip and kind of filtering out what may be an actual plan or methodology to how some of these organizations are approaching the draft versus just water cooler talk. So it is interesting that this name is coming up. One of the other things to consider, right, is that for the most part, I would say we don't really have a lot of draft leaks that come from Joe Douglas and this New York Jets team with him being at the helm, right? The closest thing that I can remember was maybe the late rise of Zach Wilson coming all the way up to when we selected him with the number 2 pick. A lot of sources, and I think it was even then very last minute, right? Maybe like a week before, a couple days leading up to before, especially as people started connecting more dots with the uncle owning the airline and all this other kind of stuff that was coming to fruition. But outside of that, I can't say that I remember anybody having any kind of early rumors or indications on what Joe Douglas wanted to do, and then that actually occurring. I mean, even in that draft with Zach Wilson, the name that I recall being mocked for the most part to us was Justin Fields, and the rumor circulating around that. So, it is what it is. It's worth noting, though, that for the most part, Joe Douglas keeps things under wraps. Tight sealed lips over there in that scouting department for the New York Jets. So if anything is coming out, I generally don't put a whole lot of faith into it. But sticking with the fact that, let's say we do really love Fuaga here, it would be an interesting situation to see how Joe Douglas tries to maneuver a draft, right? We obviously have the highlighted fact that Joe Douglas has never traded back in the first round so far while being with the Jets. And this may be an opportunity, right? We talked about Fuaga kind of being that second tier of tackles in this particular class while still being a exceptionally good one, in my opinion. This would give us our first chance to see how Joe Douglas tries to navigate maybe pulling off a trade down, right? Especially if there is a guy like Fashanu on the board, you do have a Roma Dunze, a Malik Neighbors somehow still there. You'd imagine that there's going to be a team that wants to move up for them. So could you get the best of both worlds if you're Joe Douglas? Not only the prospect that you really love in tackle Fuaga, but you also get to recoup a couple of picks, ideally, not only in that draft, but in the future as well, all while looking like a genius. For what it's worth, we do have the Senior Bowl practices going on right now. It's only the first day, but Taliese Fuaga has already kind of backed up his tape and what people should expect from him. Shined in the run blocking drills. Leatu Latu is an edge rusher that arguably is one of the best in this particular draft class, and he beat him pretty cleanly in one-on-one drills. Brandon McGregor was another name that he handled pretty readily. He did get beat by another guy. So, again, the pass blocking is not perfect, but you're pretty much getting what's advertised with a guy like Fuaga. So it'll be interesting to see if he can continue to stack days together, maybe dominate from start to finish during one of these practices, and then, of course, in the game. But as mentioned, we do have Ulbrich overseeing things, so his insight should be fairly helpful as well. But let me know what you guys think. I think, for the most part, things are pretty clear. If you have a Joe Alt or a Fashanu available, you kind of take them. There is a strong argument I can make for having a guy like Fuaga be a pick, though. I just don't know if I'd select him over a Fashanu if available. But nonetheless, let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you again. Peace.